And welcome back for chapter 29. In all the uncertainty of this moment, one thing feels clear to me. The regime that's running the United States of America has got to go. Cut it out, dismantle it, overthrow it, dump it in the ash bin of history and leave it there with the other bad ideas that got people killed while the cable news called it stability. We need regime change in the USA. And here's where I may lose some of you who are nodding along affirmatively while listening to me in your earbuds on your commute or on the treadmill at Planet Fitness. Hello. Or hiding in your car for 10 extra minutes before you go inside your house. I do not mean swapping out Trump for a more polite manager on the other side of the aisle of the same collapsing empire. Yes, regime change starts with ending the Trump administration, obviously, but it does not end there. And it is not coming through the ballot box. Even if Democrats retake the House and the Senate and drag out the impeachment playbook like one more performative, ceremonial gesture in the Church of Managed Decline, it will still be the same regime. So when I say regime change in the USA, I'm talking about ending the rule of billionaires. Scratch that, ending billionaires full stop. I'm just talking about dismantling the war machine and walking away from a system that has been strip mining human dignity at home and exporting violence abroad. And electing better Democrats will not do that. I'm talking about dismantling the entire operating system, Wall Street economics, Pentagon foreign policy, and corporate media narratives, and electing better Democrats will not do that. The regime change I'm talking about involves refusing the story that this is the best that we can do. It's about refusing the idea that empire is inevitable, and yes, beginning the long and messy and human work of building something that doesn't require exploitation, domination, and permanent war to function. And electing better Democrats will not do that. Hi, I'm Lloyd Dobler. Yeah, that Lloyd Dobler, still not buying anything, processing anything, or selling anything. And this is the Tao of Lloyd, a podcast where I try, working through the ancient wisdom of Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching, chapter by chapter, and using it as a sort of spiritual Molotov cocktail to throw at the Overton window so that we can, together, usher in a future that does not look like the final installment in some Mad Max movie franchise. And today's episode is brought to you by a question I genuinely don't know how to answer. Is wu-wei, the Taoist principle of not forcing, of acting without doing, is that still a strategy in the late stage everything shitstorm of Trumplandia? In chapter 28, we discuss the interplay and balance of things. Know the male, yet keep to the female. Know the white, yet keep to the black. Yin and yang. And it's hard to see that balance if you wake up and open that dopamine slot machine that is your phone, and the algorithm feeds you a gaggle of war-drunk clowns in power, treating geopolitics like a cage match sponsored by Raytheon. And into that moment, I'm supposed to sit here and read Lao Tzu and let my mud settle? And with that, let's settle in for our Tao reading and meditation. Clearly, I need it, and maybe this will be useful to you as well. Close your eyes and take a deep breath in through your nose and sigh it out like you just had to lick Donald Trump's undercarriage after he played 18 holes of golf. Good. One more deep breath in, breathing in, here and now, and let it go. Breathe out that sudden stab of regret for the drunken rage tweet that you sent at 2 a.m. to Stephen Miller last night. It couldn't just be me doing that, right? This is chapter 29. of the Tao Te Ching, over 2,500 years old, speaking to us today. Here it is, chapter 29. Do you want to improve the world? I don't think it can be done. The world is sacred. It can't be improved. If you tamper with it, you'll ruin it. If you treat it like an object, you'll lose it. There is a time for being ahead, a time for being behind, a time for being in motion, a time for being at rest, a time for being vigorous, a time for being exhausted, a time for being safe, a time for being in danger. The master sees things as they are without trying to control them. She lets them go their own way and resides at the center of the circle. And that was chapter 29 of the Tao Te Ching. So, before the reading, I was advocating regime change, full of yang. I was, wasn't I? Which can be unbecoming without a little bit of yin to balance things. But I still think that the operating system, and by that I largely mean the stories we tell ourselves about what is possible, the Overton window that I reference all the time, our sense of what is possible, the window through which we experience reality, which is a big part of what we would call our consciousness. I was, in this very episode, suggesting that we dismantle the entire operating system, and then chapter 29 of the Tao shows up calm as hell and says, do you want to improve the world, Lloyd? I don't think it can be done. The world is sacred. And now I'm stuck, because on the one hand, the system is producing violence, inequality, collapse, and on the other hand, the Tao is saying your attempt to control it is part of the problem. So I guess here's a question. In an age of war, collapse, and nuclear brinksmanship, is wu-wei wisdom, or is it complicity? Let that sit for a while. You don't have to answer it right now. Let's not pretend that this is easy, because this is where the 2,500-year-old text teaching of it either deepens or completely falls apart. Does wu-wei mean do nothing while bombs drop? Do nothing while ICE kills people in our cities? Do nothing while Donald Trump openly wages the biggest class war with his big, beautiful bill in the history of class war? No. It doesn't mean, I can't accept that. And if it does, throw out the book. But I don't think that's what Lao Tzu is saying. I think he's saying something much more uncomfortable. The same consciousness that created the crisis cannot solve it through force. Not military force, not political force, not ideological force, not even, I guess, podcasting force. Because every time we try to fix the world like it's a machine, we tighten something, don't we? And something else breaks. Every force creates a counterforce. You push, it pushes back. That's not strategy, that's physics. And here's the trap. You cannot defeat domination with better domination software. That's been the bipartisan project for decades. And look where it got us. Right here, right now. So no, wu-wei is not passivity, but it's also not control. It's something harder. Action without domination, participation without possession. And this is where I have to be honest with you, because part of me wants revolution with a bullhorn. And all right, I'll even go further in my honesty. I'd love to be on the poster in the future, the one children will hang on their wall that's glorifying this regime change behind the bullhorn that helped usher in this revolution, shouting into that bullhorn. But that's the kind of white male savior urge, the need to be the hero of this story that's part of this problematic narrative that needs to be tossed out with this regime. So, speaking of stories, I'd argue that this is where it all starts. The stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. It was a writer, Ursula K. Guin, who said that we live in capitalism. Its power seems inescapable. So did the divine right of kings. Any human power can be resisted and changed by human beings, she said. Resistance and change often begin in art, and very often in the art of words. So this is the kind of thinking that has to fuel the regime change that I'm talking about. Because you may, like me, hear regime change and think tanks, think coups, think flags changing hands, and the same violence wearing a different uniform. But I think Ursula Le Guin is pointing at something quieter and, honestly, maybe something more dangerous. She's saying the first regime that needs to be overthrown is the story. The narrative where you and me and just about everyone we know tell ourselves that this moment is inevitable, that this story we're in is permanent, that this is just how the world works. And it was another writer, the inspirational Arundhati Roy, in her famous speech to the World Economic Forum on the eve of the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003, when she said, quote, "Our strategy should not only be to confront empire, but to lay siege to it, deprive it of oxygen, to shame it, to mock it with our art, our music, our literature, our stubbornness, our joy, our brilliance, our sheer relentlessness, and our ability to tell our own stories. Stories that are different from the ones we're being brainwashed to believe. Remember this," Arundhati Roy said. "We be many, and they be few. They need us more than we need them. Another world is not only possible, she is on her way. On a quiet day, if I listen carefully, I can hear her breathing." And that was Arundhati Roy. So maybe regime change doesn't start with overthrowing governments. Maybe it starts with you and me and someone you forward this podcast to, asking ourselves, where am I participating in the patterns that keep producing this world? And then, who else is trying to live differently, and am I willing to join them? And then, maybe the revolution isn't something you force. Maybe it's something you stop preventing. And from the edge of the empire and the center of the self, this is the Tao of Lloyd.